Because these are potentially people he knows. So how brave are they to be like, let's just, that's Charles from accounting,
Charles the Cardassian. Captain's Pod starting 1921-45.1. Welcome aboard the starship Sinterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me as always, she jumps through stone circles and changes the past in her off hours. It's Ambassador Deneé.
Who knows which timeline we're on now?
Isn't that wild that you could have changed it and we wouldn't know because the new timeline is the right timeline? It's the new one because you wouldn't know that there was any differences.
It is because of my good graces, my love of everyone, that I won't tell you anything about what may or may not have occurred.
Am I still there? No, I don't even need to know that. Do I still have a beard?
You're here now, aren't you?
I am, but do I still have a beard in the alternate timeline?
Which alternate timeline?
How many did you fuddle with?
I can't tell you, but you just indicated that I have been willy-nillying for quite some time.
I feel like you... Okay, here's what I think would happen. Is that once you figured out that you knew how to reset it, you would then play around for about 700 years with all of the different permutations and then reset it. Because you'd know there were no consequences. So you could experiment and do all of these different thought experiments and then reset it.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do. I definitely think I would abuse the power. That's all I'm confident about at this moment.
That's a given. That's an absolute given. Well, speaking of abuses of power, this week marks the end of our fan favorite season for now. I was literally flooded with maybe several emails.
Flooded with several
emails of people semi-quasi disappointed that we didn't get to their favorite.
Of course.
This has been such a great season. It is one, like time travel and stuff, we will 100% be returning to, because we have still got stacks of quality episodes that we haven't got to. But all good things do come to an end.
Yeah, we kind of accidentaled our way into a treasure trove of great episodes.
We really did. It's so much fun.
But part of the fun of the show has been discovering these sort of season ideas, because when we first started Captain's Pod, I don't think we intended to we didn't intend to have these seasons of little ideas.
No, we didn't intend to go beyond Picard, to be honest.
Yeah, we were just doing Picard, and then in between Picard, we're like, well, I guess we could do something else. Let's do monster episodes, and it's sort of
let's just do Sub Rosa, because apparently that was my choice.
So it's been a fun evolution of the show, and your guys' feedback has definitely helped a lot, because you give us a lot of ideas about episodes to try out, whereas if we just went with the OG version of the podcast and we never asked for any of it, it would all just be your versions of your favorite. It
would just be the here's what Ian likes about Star Trek podcast, and I think that might be a bit dull.
I tried that on one of the alternate versions, and you're right, it was a bit dull.
And we failed.
No, it wasn't that we failed. It was a little bit. No.
People don't like me. They're just here for you.
No. You have a fan base. They eventually got to be a little bit much.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah. Anyone that's bonkers enough to be a fan of me specifically probably shouldn't be trusted.
That was my experience. That's why I ended that timeline with a very large black hole.
Oh my gosh, that's violent. Well, it is very fitting to end with the episode that has been requested the most. Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 19, In the Pale Moonlight. A controversial choice for sure, because it, I think most people will agree, it is best appreciated with
drunk.
You do not know how accurate that is. You do not realize how alcohol plays a role in this episode.
No, I have no idea.
That's excellent. Okay. Hold that thought.
Should I go get a bottle of wine?
You should get a glass of a hard liquor.
A little day drinking.
You should. And see if you can live with it afterwards.
It is 11 a.m.
Fair. Absolutely fair. So, it is best appreciated with context of the season. However, my counterpoint to that is a truly great episode should still hit at least 75% as hard without the context, because you've still got a great story there that should still work on its own. So yeah, that's why we eventually caved, and we're doing it. We're doing a big episode.
I don't know that we caved. I think I insisted.
You did insist.
Yeah, I really like going in blind.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite kind of experiences. So
Can I tell you one thing that will help though? No,
Drunk?
you want 0.
I want 0.
0. Okay, 0 can't take. This is so hard because there were 2 things I was going to tell you, but I won't tell you them if you don't want me to.
I'm going to request that you not.
Okay.
And there's a couple
Fair.
of reasons for that. One, it's my preference, which
Yeah.
stands alone and is confident enough. But 2, in the past, when you told me things that you thought
fair.
were important,
Absolutely fair.
They went sideways so fast.
So fast.
I don't remember which episode it was,
yeah.
but you ended up telling me something that just was like, what?
I may have told you something that was in the wrong episode.
It was completely wrong or something like that. And then it just changed how I watched the episode.
Okay, completely blind. I think we've told you enough in the past anyway that you'll pick up on
and
it.
Maybe I'll remember. At this point, all I know is just my very few episode comfortability with the cast.
Yeah. Okay. I can't wait for this. Let's head over to the holodeck and watch the episode. We'll see you in 10 forward for a full debrief. To beam out. Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab something from the replicator and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episode we just watched together. Most important question first. What is your thing of choice, Ambassador?
Yeah, it was some kind of let me look it up. Hold on a second. I got to find it. It was like a cauliflower.
Yes.
It was some kind of a blue liquid that definitely had to have some more aromatics, but you know what? It was pretty good.
Romulan cauliflower?
Was it really
Yeah,
cauliflower?
Romulan cauliflower drink.
Why
That's
did
what
they
it
call
was.
it cauliflower, of all things?
I personally would like to request a certain short film maker of 359, Commander Dave Ellis, who is going to be joining us this week.
Well, you got me.
Yay!
Just the
it worked!
replicated version of me.
It worked! That almost never happens. I secretly wish for that every week, and this time it actually worked.
Oh, that's so scary. Like you just replicate a person and they just sort of like
But it's still that
just morph out of it.
It's still the rectangle hole, and you just like get forced out of it and then form into the man that I want.
Birthing chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my aromatics aren't correct.
But you do get used to them. They're very convincing.
Oh my
I've been
God.
told.
Yeah. What are you? Is it in the positive or the negative that your aromatics aren't matching? Like,
Well, I guess it all depends on your taste.
I guess that's
It's
true.
very true.
That's true.
That's very true. Well, we are wrapping up, as we said at the top of the show, our fan favorite season, and Dave is one of the many people who emailed in the Pale Moonlight on his list, and we made a pact that I can live with several months ago, that if we ever covered in the Pale Moonlight, I would bring Dave back on. For those of you that don't know, we last had Dave on the show to talk about 359, his multi-award winning short film made by this lovely genius. And we've drafted him back in to talk about In the Pale Moonlight. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing quite well, thank you. And always great to have an excuse to watch this episode again. Not that I need
We
one.
don't need the excuse, do we? Should just be constantly playing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ambassador, do you mind if the commander gives the synopsis this week?
No, not at all. Go for it.
Oh, wow. And
I put you on the spot for this one.
Okay, so in the midst of the Dominion War, the Federation is doing badly, as are all their allies. The only way that Cisco can see to get the Federation back in the war is to bring the Romulans in on the Federation's side of the war. Unfortunately, the Romulans really don't want to do that. They're happy to have the Dominion as an ally that they don't help and just let them do whatever they want. But Cisco sees a way to bring them into the war by maybe fudging the facts just a little bit.
Just like minor fudge.
That's a good synopsis.
I love it. Ambassador, I'm dying to hear yours.
Oh gosh.
You now have, because Dave did the
add to
proper
that.
synopsis.
Yeah, I'll
you
add
get to
to
do your
that.
silly one.
And the way that Cisco decides to do that is to go to a tailor
Yes.
and really just experiment with the gray area of morality.
Mm-hmm.
And this episode is a personal log that we were never meant to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that. Oh, in this episode, we get to see Quark.
No, I forgot that scene happens, and when I realized he was injured, I was like, oh no, Deneé's going to hate this just because Quark was hurt.
I would say that this is an episode that you would definitely want to show someone if you're doing is it Garrick?
Garrick, yeah. It's the ultimate Garrick episode. It really is.
If you're doing like a bad guys series, like bad guys you love to hate, this is definitely a really good one to kind of show, because I think Sisko could be a bad guy you love to hate. I think Garrick could be a bad guy you love to hate. Even the Romulan that we only see for just a little bit could be a bad guy you love to hate. So this is definitely like one of those bad guy episodes, like a good episode of bad guys.
So before we get into specifics, overall general thoughts and feelings, Ambassador.
This is like, even though it's definitely a more serious episode, as most Deep Space Nine are, my overall thoughts and feelings are that this is like a really good way to, I assume, shift the entire dynamic of Deep Space Nine. Like, I can't imagine watching this as a fan as it's coming out and you're just like, Dominion War, Dominion War, Dominion War, Dominion War. We're not doing good. This is not going great. And then all of a sudden it's like, this is how things turn in our favor. And it's presented in this really sort of subverted moral kind of way, using your captain, as the delivery device for dabbling in deceit. Not only deceit, but like Starfleet approved deceit. So it kind of shows a dirtier, darker version of the fa la 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 sort of vibe that I'm.
The Boy Scout vibe of
Yeah.
Starfleet has been described online. Yeah.
Yeah. So I really liked it. It's a very serious one, and the tone is very serious, but this is a fantastic episode of.
I think that's a really good way to describe it. Whether you like Star Trek or not, whether this is your thing or not, I think it's hard to deny that this is just a well-crafted episode of television. Before I do kind of want to run through it almost scene by scene, not in like a this is going to take 7 weeks kind of way, but because it's a very chronological type of episode in the terms of like how it reveals itself. So overall thoughts, Dave, why does this crack your list of being just up there as incredible Star Trek?
Well, at the top level, it does what Star Trek does best. It's an episode that really makes you think about the story and about how you might react in a situation like that. I think all the best Star Trek episodes make you think, but this one makes you think about Star Trek in a way that up to this point. I remember seeing this episode for the first time when it originally came out, and I was blown away because I'd never thought about Starfleet and Starfleet officers in this kind of light before. And I mean, it even gets the whole needs of the many versus the needs of the few. This is that argument, but it is on such a grand scale. It's not just I'm going to steal the Enterprise and go, rescue Spock.
Yeah.
This is I'm going to put an entire race into a war that they don't want to be in just to benefit my side.
Yeah. And it really is the flip side of that argument because, like you said, with Kirk stealing the Enterprise to rescue one man, this is also to potentially save 3 species worth of people for the sake of the Romulan people. So the numbers are still, if you're just going by math, they're still on Sisko's side because he's technically saving more people in the long run. So it's really, really great on so many levels, and it is probably the most morally ambiguous we ever see Starfleet become.
Yeah, it's true. And it's something that I don't think could have been explored on any of the other Star Trek series in that era, definitely.
No.
Maybe Enterprise, but I feel like, Archer would just accidental himself into getting an entire race into a war. He wouldn't go out, try to do it and have it happen. He would just accidentally do it.
He might do it through incompetence. It's absolutely true. So one of my favorite facts about this episode, Deneé, can you just take a guess where in the Pale Moonlight the title originates from? If you were to take a guess where Star Trek pulled this from, where would it be?
A vampire series.
Well, my initial instinct was that it was from like some old piece of literature or an old poem or something like that. but my research, and I'm sure Dave will be able to confirm this for me, is that it comes from Tim Burton's Batman 1987 movie.
Oh my gosh.
So the Joker says to Batman, "Do you ever dance in the devil with the pale moonlight?" And this
interesting.
Is,
kind of like the idea of dancing with your own devil in the pale moonlight. Gotcha.
Exactly. And I think Ronald D. Moore titled the episode, and he assumed that Batman pulled it from some piece of literature and didn't assume that anybody wrote that just for a Batman movie and just assumed it was Shakespeare or something. So yeah, that's my initial favorite fact. That's just, it's so bonkers. That's so strange.
I also, before we kind of like get into the nuts and bolts of the episode and kind of things like and scenes or characters and questions and all that stuff, at the beginning of the show, you wanted to tell me some facts about today's episode, and now I want to know what they are.
Oh, like the context facts?
Yeah, you wanted to tell me 2 points of context, and I said, no, don't tell me anything.
This is really cool. Yeah, I wonder how much this would have helped. And I'm glad we didn't, and I don't think we needed it in the end. But I just wanted to remind you that we were in the middle of the Dominion War, and things were going really freaking badly, because this is like episode 19 of season 6. So we as viewers have been in the Dominion War for a while. It is going badly, and pretty much every episode has been telling us that. But this episode does a great job of setting that up anyway, with the casualty lists and whatnot. And the only other thing was to give you some context about Garak, because I think we've mentioned Garak, but he's such a focal point of this episode. If you don't know how sneaky he is and how like he is a suspected spy, this episode is 6 seasons of building up Garak as maybes and ifs, and there are rumors, to firmly placing him as, no, he has the power and he is capable of a great many things.
Can we start by talking about Garak? Because I feel like he's the main character of this episode.
He absolutely is, and everybody will love that we're talking about Garak. Give me your Garak thoughts.
So I do have a question for you, and this might not be easily answered, but I'm glad to have both of you here, because I think like, as described by Sarah in the chat, what a delicious character indeed.
Isn't he just?
The acting in this episode is so juicy, but Garak obviously is the dessert
yes
of this episode. Like even the Romulan that popped on board for a sec, I was like, wow, he's delightful to watch. Really draws you in, even though there's so much seriousness going on. But anyway, my question, I think, to start off with is, after this episode, like, did this episode, as if watching Deep Space Nine, both of you, did you feel like you had a better understanding that Garak is, yes, a spy, and yes, connected, but also loyal? Because he could have done so many things here to subvert his place on, like, whatever he's doing on Deep Space Nine, whatever dream he's living out as a tailor.
Hiding is the best word.
Okay. So, maybe his options are more limited than I have an understanding, because I haven't seen basically any of this show. But like, if there was a question about his quote unquote loyalty, if a spy like him can have one, did this make you more like him as a character? Did you feel more comfortable with him going forward in Deep Space Nine? Like what happened after this episode for this character for you guys?
I'm gonna let Dave go first on this one.
Yeah, I already liked Garak. I liked Garak from the first time he showed up. And he and you don't see any of it in this episode, but he and Dr. Bashir have a really interesting relationship on a lot of levels.
Oh,
yes, you got it.
What did we watch? That was that an animated?
Yep.
We watched those two together. Did. Oh my God! Sorry.
No, I was gonna bring it in, and I'm so glad you did. The penultimate episode of Lower Decks brings an alternate version which canonizes. There's a timeline where Bashir and Garak are a married couple.
And now I want to go back and watch that one.
Yes.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just remembering that we did see that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
But up to this point, Garak has been anywhere from just he always refers to himself as just a simple tailor. And it's always been obvious from day one that he was not just a simple tailor. And prior to this episode, it is revealed that he did work for the
Obsidian
Order.
Mm-hmm.
His father or adopted father was Enabran Tain, who was the head of the Obsidian Order. You get to meet him earlier in the series as well, and I would argue that Garak had already proven how far he can go as a villain when he tortured Odo in one episode.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Odo had been captured and was on a Romulan ship when they were going to attack the Founders' homeworld. They're the ones who are the head of the Dominion.
They're the ones that live in the weird hole thing.
They live in the bucket. Oh, no. So that's the Bajoran aliens.
They're not the Founders.
No, they're not the Founders.
Oh,
No, the wormhole aliens are different.
Okay.
Yeah, Odo's people are the Founders. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
But yeah, Garak was in a position where he was being told to torture Odo for information about about his people, and he had a device that he used on Odo that wouldn't let Odo go back to liquid form, and Odo was literally falling apart while Garak, pumped him for information. So Garak is certainly a bad guy, but he always operates on a level that gets him what he needs out of any given situation. In this episode, I feel like, and it's in the way it's acted in the scene where when Sisko asks him if he's in or out, and Garak's like, oh, he's like, I'm in.
Yeah.
There is no question.
That expression was something between, oh, this will really be fun, and I want to just see how far you'll go.
Yeah.
Yes. This is my favorite flavor of ice cream. Of course I'm going to partake.
And to have so much of your face obscured by prosthetics and still be able to emulate and to act and kind of convey these really interesting sort of nuanced vibes, this sort of joy of, I'm in, this like, I don't know, is the word salacious the right word? That's not the right word. But like there's like a desire.
He's reveling in it.
He really likes the chaos and the control. And it reminds me of like almost some Quark a little bit, like the position of power that Sisko allows these characters to be in over his decision making, and them realizing that they don't normally get to be in that position of influence. So you're like wondering how far they're going to push it. Like, wherever happened that bio liquid that was sent out? Like,
oh my gosh,
there needs to be a couple episodes about what happened to that stuff, because he got Sisko had to do some crazy stuff to achieve it. But to watch Garak specifically in that moment you're talking about, that was really fun, because you're just like, oh, he just made a deal with the devil.
He really did.
But like a super lovable one in an interesting way.
Well, and that's it. He is so lovable. Like there are actors and characters that define species. Worf and Michael Dorn is a great example for the Klingons. Garak and Andrew Robinson really defined Cardassians for me, and it's very similar to Worf because he's an outcast. He's on Deep Space Nine because he's been expelled by the Cardassians. He's not allowed to return to his home planet, so he is an exile among Starfleet, and he's just a great character, but he still holds the stereotypical things about Cardassians that you would expect, or that Star Trek has kind of crafted. So he's a great way to delve into the species without having a Star Trek Cardassia TV show.
Yeah, he's not only among Starfleet officers, he's among Bajorans who the Cardassians occupied. So he's not trusted by the Starfleet officers entirely. He's pretty much hated by all the Bajorans. And he's stuck on a Bajoran station, the only Cardassian there.
It's amazing.
Well, I want to get back to like how this impacted the future of this character in just a second, but I want to bunny trail off while we're talking about a character like him being this, like what makes him unique. And my question is, can we have a character like Garak without having a character like Quark? Because Quark is someone who defines the race, and like you learn to love his badness. Whereas I feel like Garak, the way you're talking about him, is a Kardashian true, but like you learn to love that part of their nature because of the good character work. Like, I don't know that I liked any kind of Ferengi until Quark, because that was just so well, like you begin to almost respect the law of Quark. So
he lives it and makes it real instead of just this arbitrary set of things that every Ferengi must do. He embodies it and lives it.
Like, in Star Trek just has a way of putting characters in front of you that you're like, okay, this is kind of an uncomfortable character to get to know. And to me, that's like a Quark character.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to like Worf. Worf is just his gruffness is very different than the evil nature of Quark, and Garrick has that evil nature. He very much seems to be like lawfully evil.
Yeah, I think the difference between the Ferengi and the Cardassians is the Ferengi pretend to be evil and mischievous, but they're just kind of out for profit. Whereas Garrick pretends to be all nice, and he deep down actually is part of a probably the most evil part of a race that is generally evil on Star Trek.
Yeah. I think I'm talking more about like the show intentionally kind of warming us, the viewer, up to watching and warming up to a character more than like the differences in their race. Does that make sense? If we didn't have characters that test us out to like the darker parts of the inner workings of what makes a character work, like Quark or others, I don't know that Garrick would be as easy to watch.
Yeah, I think ultimately Garrick does come out as being somebody we're allowed to like, and we genuinely do like, because I think initially the show was pitching him as he'll do anything to save his own skin. And he has the ability to maneuver and chess piece his way through any situation as long as the outcome is that he is still breathing at the end of it. But as the series goes on and on and on, he does make a few decisions where it's like, that wasn't completely self-serving. That was because you've bonded with somebody, and he may lie about it and say, no, dear doctor, that was completely in my own interest. Deep down, I don't think the writers could help but give him some heart and compassion. So it's those episodes where he does something selfless that I think tip him over into not just self-serving, and if there's a good outcome, it's just a coincidence that it lined up with him doing something that kept him alive, into actually, no, I think he would push himself to save these people that he's come to know and love over 7 years. But he's the closest to that grey line. Like, he is, I could accept an argument either way.
But is it easier for you to watch a character like that, having had characters like Quark to watch? That's kind of my point that I'm getting at.
That's interesting.
I think that I guess Worf does the same thing for Klingons. What Quark does for the Ferengi and what Garrick does for the Cardassians and Worf does for the Klingons is they flesh out what those races can be, up to the point those characters were main characters on the Star Trek show. They were pretty one-dimensional species. And once you got these characters that give you like the shades of gray for all of those species, you get to you feel like they're more,
acceptable.
More acceptable in the case of Quark and Garrick, for sure.
It's just, to me, this episode like really pushes that Star Trek is, once again, like you mentioned, like putting these things in our face. But it's not just that Quark is gray, in the gray area sometimes of likability, or that Garrick is in the gray area of likability, or like you want to root for them. Like there's a certain point where you stop, but Sisko enters that field too. And the show does the thing that I think is so clever with the writing, where ultimately the worst part of what's done can land on Garrick's shoulders. And while Sisko opened the door for him, we, the viewer, don't have to have our morality questioned so much, because they give the out to Garrick. They say that this is the murder of the final crafting, the inner working is ultimately the deeper doing of Garrick. Garrick did the deed.
Yeah, I think that's why we can eventually be okay with it. Because we're pinning it on Garrick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so to now complete the circle, does that change how you felt about Garrick after this episode? Because I feel like this is a really big Garrick moment. Now, Sisko obviously showing his decision-making and how that impacts everything. And that ultimately was kind of like his pushing to get all this done. But did Garrick change for you after this? Did you respect him more? Like, did he feel like a more likable character after this?
I think I was scared of him more. I think I was more aware of what he's capable of, because like the great example is Tolar, the blue alien. The way he reacts to the mention of Garrick's name, and whatever Sisko says or does to him, Garrick always has the final line that is simply, "I'll see you in your quarters." Like all of those bits, and then the final punch at the end. It really cemented that, thank goodness Garrick is on our side for now. So yeah, it definitely made me respect his power And like, man, if he could, you know, when you sometimes see somebody that's super smart, but they're freaking lazy. And like, imagine if you had 10% motivation, you could achieve anything. It's that kind of thing with Garak. If he had a reason to be against the Federation, I'd be really scared. So I think it cemented that for me.
Yeah, it's hard for me to remember what it was like the first time I watched the series through because I've watched it so many times now. Now it seems like this is just another piece of the Garak puzzle because I'm not going to give away too much of what happens after this with Garak, but Garak goes through quite a character arc through the show where he's in a position at the end of Deep Space Nine that you never really would have expected Garak to be in. And
the janitor.
Yeah, fed up of making clothes.
But yeah, he I mean, this is just a piece of that puzzle. It's just one more thing that shows you, wow, Garak is really resourceful and he's willing to go to any length to do whatever it is he's going to do.
Yeah.
And what he chooses to do as the show goes on is what makes his character really interesting for the rest of the show. And it's, like I said, it's fascinating where he ends up eventually.
I do have a question. Is his motivation to become involved at this level, to burn all of his favors back on the home world, to have his contacts ultimately murdered and just have to kind of be like, well, that happened?
Yeah, that's a resource.
Is his motivation that the usurping of the people in charge of Cardassia are, if they're not in charge, he has more leverage to potentially go home or put himself into a different position than what he is right now? Like, is that part of his motivation, or is he just bored?
I think the impression that you get eventually is that he is proud of what Cardassia was and is not happy with the way that Cardassia is and would like to be part of his culture again.
Okay.
But now he's in a gray area where he can't possibly be a part of that because the current people are, they hate him as much as he hates them. So he can't go home.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a couple of people that framed this really well in the live chat, and it's that Garak is committed to Cardassia, like, and what it was in its prime, to excuse the pun. But he's a patriot for Cardassia, and he wants the best for his people. And that's one of the reasons he accepted exile, is because it wasn't just to save himself. He believed that was the best thing to allow the Obsidian Order to continue as well. But now that they're in cahoots with the Dominion, this is the worst version of Cardassia. So it's not that he wants to see Starfleet succeed.
Right.
I genuinely believe that he's trying to do the best thing for his people.
It's so great that this episode seemed to give me that impression.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's really good. Because
it packed so much in, and this is one that really has great dialogue throughout. And there's a lot of information that is completely, like, I'm not paying attention to these details because, like, the different people that are involved in the Dominion War, there's a lot that's kind of lost on me, the viewer, that's just dropping in and plopping out.
Yeah.
But Garak was somebody I definitely wanted to start with because he obviously had such a key role. And even the end when Cisco comes to him and punches him and he's mad because he knows that Garak put the bomb on the shuttle that killed this Romulan senator.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That exchange between he and Cisco is so powerful. I would watch that scene a couple more times if I had the time for it.
It's so good.
And I think one of the reasons is because there's just this level of, I'm going to say unhinged, but that implies that Garak's not in control, but he super is in control because he's not at all surprised to see Cisco, or he's almost like, there's this spell in Dungeons and Dragons, absorb elements. And it seems like he just takes Cisco's rage and is like, yep, I've been waiting for that, and uses that fuel and just kind of hands it back over to him and has been just waiting to deliver the news that you wanted me to do this.
Oh, like, it gives me tingles.
So good.
All of his energy is like, if you stop punching me for 2 seconds, I'll explain everything and it's going to make sense. And he has every single word is like, yes, I know it's scripted, it's not real, but I believe that Garak has every word of this speech ready to go, and is trying to get it out between punches because he knows it's logical, and he knows that Cisco wouldn't have come to him if he wasn't ready for this outcome. And it's the way Andrew Robinson delivers that entire scene, like defensively, but also attacking with his viewpoint that he knows he's got like the winning argument. Oh man, that scene in an episode filled with powerful
if your conscience
scenes.
is bothering you, you should soothe it with the knowledge that you have just saved the entire Alpha Quadrant, and all it cost was the life of one Romulan senator, one criminal, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer.
So
I don't
good.
know
It's
about you,
so-
but I call that a bargain.
It's
So
so good. And because he knows, like, I love Sisko, but the man has an ego. There is no way that you accept being the prophet to an entire species, reluctantly or otherwise. And I think every captain needs to have an element of ego, and Garak is feeding that ego with that. Like, you can bear the burden of this evil deed, and you take that on your conscience because that's the sacrifice of saving the entire galaxy. And he can live with it because that guilt, he's going to own that guilt, and he's going to treasure it because it means that the good guys win. Oh.
Before we move on to anything else, too, the other thing that I really loved about that is when Sisko, like, he's like, you killed him, and you killed Blular as well. And I knew he was dead the second that he delivered the line, "I'll see you in your quarters."
Yep.
But it's how he delivers the line.
With a smile.
This is why this is a great episode to watch.
Yeah.
Because there's just it's so fun to watch the embodiment of these characters that I am not at all used to seeing. Like this seedy guy that comes in to make this holodeck kind of thing, and usually he's used to doing like people's fantasy holodeck stuff. And,
Yes.
and instead he's doing something, and like all the loose ends that are getting tied up, Garak's like, I know what's got to be done. And it's not even really a concern to him. To have someone that can make those decisions, you're right. There's like, it's terrifying. So it's good to know that he's on our side for now or for whatever. But that, when he delivered that line, that doesn't work unless the actor playing the blue guy, Tolar, did such a great scene with Sisko when he was rescued from the Klingons, because that scene where he's just like, hey, it's good to see you, man. Blah,
Let's
blah,
get
blah.
some Orion slave girls. Let's do it.
Pew, 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 pew. And then they just mention Garak's name, and his entire countenance changes. And that's when little things like that is what writers have to do to give the unknown audience any kind of understanding. That gave me almost everything I needed to know about Garak. Was just like, oh shit. Like, he's not just the guy that I just saw in that scene, which was an interesting person and like a little hard to read. It went to, oh, he's dangerous. So then when the payoff of I'll see you later, I was like, oh, he did.
And he knows it. And he could run, but he knows he's dead. It's when he's in the turbo lift with Sisko, and he's like, I may have intimated that if he tried to get out the door, it would explode. And I genuinely don't know if he did it or not. I don't know if he rigged the door to explode. And that's so
Just not to
great.
dwell on such things.
Yes.
And he's talking to the
Yes,
audience. He's
he
like,
is.
just don't dwell on it. I was like,
But-
I believe you.
But like, you can say that, and if the acting hadn't hit right, the writing hadn't hit right, that could have been just a comedy line, you know. But there's just enough going on, especially with the delivery of Tolar, that I knew that we were in a dangerous situation. So then when he says, I'm going to go on the shuttle and just look for some intel, I was like, yeah, what are you actually doing? Or with like, I don't know, he is such an intriguing character. I would watch a show where he's the main character.
This is why
Like a little seedy version of Star Trek, you know?
Oh my gosh, there's Star Trek Garak has been called for multiple times, and we've had several emailers that have. I have a compilated list from somebody that has done all of the Garak episodes and says
so
this
fun.
is how you should. We could easily do a Garak season. He is, to use some video game parlance, the BFG of Deep Space Nine. He's the big fucking gun that actually gets used. So a lot of times, a series will have this secret weapon. They'll have this thing that is built up, and you never really see it used to full effect. This episode is using Garak to full effect. It's like, oh, you thought we were bluffing? We unleash him, and guess what? He gets the Romulans to join a galactic war. One man did that. And I believe it. It's not just contrivance, and a bit of luck was on his side. he is meticulous with this plan, and he thinks he's letting Sisko thinks he's making the choices, but he's really not. Garak knows what choices Sisko will make and has it all buttoned up. Oh, it's so good. So good. Let's get into this episode does loads of controversial things for Star Trek, loads of new things. Top of the list as a TV nerd is this direct-to-camera thing. To my knowledge, the first time Star Trek ever did this, something I'm sure Gene would not have approved of because it reminds you that you're watching a TV show. So there is so much eye contact, but I think this episode is still incredible without it, but it is next level because of the eye contact with Sisko and just letting Avery Brooks sink in to the entire scene and just make some eye contact with the camera. And it's just magic. Deneé, as a non-TV nerd, was it distracting? Did you love it? Did it help or hinder?
Stop staring at me, Schwan.
Stop staring at me, Sisko.
I have to believe that Sisko has a computer device in his personal room that has like a monitor in front of him that he's looking at. Like I wish they'd maybe just spun the camera around to see what he's looking at, just so that I have a little bit of an understanding of what his display is. That's the only thing that maybe I would have kind of been like, oh, that's what he's looking at. In my imagination, it's like WALL-E or Johnny Five, kind of like this little personal robot that pops in, Roomba. Just like kind of pops in. It's just like, like a robot therapist, sort of there. But he is talking to an empty room, but he's talking to a very specific thing in the empty room. And I know that it's me for the effect that you're talking about. So was it distracting? No, I don't think it was distracting in a bad way because I'm going to make my imagination make it make sense. I thought it was a really clever way of drawing the audience into an uncomfortable conversation about war.
Yeah, I think that it's almost necessary to frame this as a captain's log because nobody other than Garak really knows what happened in this episode. So the normal way that you would progress the story by talking to other characters, he even says, I can't talk to anybody about this, not even Dax.
Yeah.
So we need him to be talking to us about it just so that he can move the story along. But I think
what if it would have been Picard's doll? He's just talking to. Sorry, carry on.
It would not, for many reasons, it would not be an effigy of Picard. Sisko would voodoo doll a Picard doll.
Oh, yes, he would.
Yeah.
But I think that it all, beyond the narrative, the narrative purpose that it serves, I think that it also gives it a lot of power to have Sisko, working out his problems directly to the audience. You're like right there in it with him.
Yeah, like it would have been so different. A lot of times when you see people doing like a log, they're sort of walking around and just pacing, but how it would have been so. I think it would have just created a buffer between us and the reality of what's happening. There's just an intensity that this type of delivery gives. Like, how weird would this episode have been if he's just lying on bed, like with his legs kind of half off, just sort of kicking his little feet while he's, you know what I mean?
So one of the critiques I've seen that kind of leads to that is the intensity and the emotion that Avery Brooks is putting into it, especially when Garak is, I think it's when Garak is I can't remember what point it was, but he's basically like really, Sisko is torturing himself. And then he gets the casualty list the next day, and that pushes him over the edge. Yeah. And it's like, people are dying out there. And it's like, would you be that dramatic on your captain's log? Or would you be more factual about it? Like, that feels like you are doing a monologue on stage in a play. You're doing some Shakespeare. But I still love it. I wouldn't switch it. Like, if you think to yourself, how would I report this log? Would I do this pleading thing? And maybe you would, because you're trying to rationalize the things that you did. Like he said at the top of the episode, I have to talk to somebody I have to talk this through, because what the hell have I just done? But it is a lot for a captain's log.
Yeah, I felt like he was really yelling at himself. He's trying to justify what he did, and I think that's perfectly in keeping with Sisko's character. And he's an extremely emotional guy. He's emotional with other people. Made sense to me that in a personal log where he's essentially arguing with himself over what he did, that he would be just as emotional.
I have gone through some stuff recently in the past few years, and I decided to blog about it. And I was very emphatic on a few of them, just hearing myself talk. And he even says, I think at the beginning of the whole episode, I need to justify what has happened. And so it's kind of the same thing. I can relate to that. I need to justify, I need to hear myself explain to myself why I am making these decisions that are changing everything. Like there is only, I've changed everything because of a choice I made, and nothing is the same anymore. Lives are changed, relationships are different. Like it's huge, a seismic shift. And that was just from my personal life. He's making a decision for entire planets that don't even know what he has done. So I believed the intensity. It wasn't, usually Sisko's a bit distracting to me. I still, like I've said on the show before, and it's a little controversial, and I apologize because I know that it's not, if I watch all of Deep Space Nine, I would definitely have a different, more informed opinion. Sisko is not my favorite. His intense, like when he attacks Bluey, I was like, what the hell? Like he is, and then his personal, he's like, I'm a bit unhinged. I'm like, fucking kidding, man. Like, yeah, he's a bad guy, but just the intensity, you have to kind of believe it in a way that he is so in the gray, so concerned with being caught, so much pressure. And Garrick's like, I got you, brother. That man's dead later tonight. Don't you worry.
I'll do the thing you won't ask me to do.
So the intensity of it's like, oh, he is. So when you said, Dave, that he's really emotional, I appreciated that, because the emotion that he's showing, even in his personal log, and throughout the episode, it's like, oh, that's part of his character and his delivery. I think it wasn't really unbelievable to me. It was a bit Kirk-esque a couple times. There's some ways that
some of that delivery.
He kind of like delivers in the sort of cadence that I'm like, oh, that's a Sisko thing,
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't distracting to me in a bad way. And the eye contact wasn't distracting to me. And the open shirt wasn't distracting to me. Like he was really just kind of like, God, can you imagine the weight of having to do this? Like I believed the weight of what he was doing. And the camera wasn't always straight to face. There was some side where it was from the side, but he was always just looking forward and just sort of if I had to make a decision that would bring in an entire empire, knowing that so many are going to die for my own cause, and I had to wrestle with that, I think I would just stare off in the distance too. You know?
It's a famously used interrogation tactic that they put into movies and stuff. If you're being tortured, pick a spot on the wall, hold that spot, and just think about your happy place, and then go someplace else. Yeah. So I get it, and it's I don't have a thing I would change about it. There is a version of this where, and this is when you mentioned alcoholic beverages at the top of the show, there's a version of this where Sisko doesn't ignore that drink, he keeps drinking it, and he gets gradually drunker as the episode goes on, and he's more, not like falling over drunk, but the emotion comes through and he's a bit more sloppy, but they kind of put the kibosh on that for many reasons, like drinking alcohol on TV in the 90s was apparently taboo. But what I do love about this is the gradual stripping down of his uniform through that metaphor. The first jacket comes off, the undershirt gets undone. He is literally stripping himself bare to this log and getting everything out. So yeah, that is really, really powerful.
I think one of the moments that got me, I'm kind of curious, like what moments got you? Maybe this is a question I can throw back to you, Dave, and obviously Ian, like what moment in his face to camera, his captain's logs got you? The one that got me the most was when he's like, there's a party later on. Just this idea that,
a welcome to the war party.
Yeah, you have to kind of like, he's got to walk in there knowing his part in it and no one else knows, and celebrate this. And that was a really emotional thing. But the way he said it, like there's a party, like this, the way he delivered that line was
the most
really
natural
emotional
thing in the world.
Yeah,
of course there's a party.
Yeah, it was just like, I don't know, the irony of it,
Yes.
It was really, that moment got me more than anything in his face to cameras. What about you guys? Like, what about his personal log really stood out?
Well, the two lines that I actually wrote down as I was rewatching it were when he says, my cause was righteous, my intentions were good. In the beginning, that seemed like enough. That was like where you can see where sees where his slide started. And the other one was people are dying out there, entire worlds are struggling for their freedom, and here I am still worrying about the finer points of morality.
Oh, I love that so much.
And it's such a great line, and it really lays bare the whole the depth of the gray area that he's in. He knows that what he's trying to get done is the thing that needs to get done in order for the good guys to win, essentially. But he also realizes that he has gone so far down the dark path, if you will.
It's great.
It was interesting. It was like the whole conversation. And again, the reason that narrative thing works for me is it's like just peeling away the layers of this story until you get to the very core of it. And it's just really powerful stuff.
It's beautifully framed. It's risky to do something that is flashback based because it can kneecap the momentum. It can take you out of scenes. But when the scene that you're being taken out of is to go back to Sisko being this intense, I was like itching to get back to him each time. And to your point about the way he is in the gray area, it's almost selfish if he doesn't do this. I was like, who am I to put my morals above this choice? Like, it would be selfish of him to take the easy road where he has a clear conscience. And can he live with that? Can he live with not doing the hard thing just so that he can sleep at night? He'll take the sleepless nights to do this. And that leads into my favorite part. And I think it'll be most people's favorite part. It's no surprise. It's the shift at the very, very end when he says,
yes,
I will learn to live with it. And I'm tingling, the change of tone, I can live with it. And he's smiling. He's happy. It's like, guess what? Believe me, I can. Like, I've weighed it all up. Yeah, I'm okay with this. This was the right thing to do. Oh, it's so good because I think 99.9% of other shows would use that as fuel to self-doubt and to torture himself and hide away in a cupboard and say, I can't live with this. And he's like, you know what? I'm good with it. What 10 out of 10 would recommend, would absolutely do this with Garak again. Yeah, it's so powerful. It's brilliant acting, brilliant writing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at. It's interesting to look at this in the through the lens of all of the other Star Trek shows and what the other captains would do. Picard absolutely would never do this.
Nope.
No. He would let the whole Federation go down for his ideals to be held up.
And we have proof of that with Hugh. He has the opportunity to destroy the Borg and he says, no, I won't do it because it's not fair to sacrifice that one life. It's not up to me to do that. He made literally the opposite choice in TNG. It's so freaking good.
Yeah, it really shows that you can justify your choice however you want, which is how the episode started. You do have to sometimes reflect and go, I need to decide if I just made the right decision and it's already done. And when you do that, a lot of times you begin to remind yourself of here's the facts that were happening that led me to make this decision that I can't undo. And I don't know that he made the right decision, but it's interesting because the flashbacks are his own personal evidence, his own personal this is why I did what I did. For example, one of the things that kind of stood out to me was when they were talking about the Betazoid attack. Of course, Star Trek wants to give us something no, not the Betazoids,
not Betazoids. They didn't do anything to anybody.
It was really clever, actually, because I wasn't really invested until they said Betazoid.
That's it. And originally, it's so great because originally there's a draft where it was Vulcan, but that was too big. It was like, it's too...
Well,
Betazoid is perfect.
But they did say Vulcan. They said that when Betazoid falls in the next thing,
that's the domino.
And they kind of did the domino effect, and then they brought in other planets that people would recognize if they just tuned in for this one episode of Deep Space Nine, like I did, potentially, right? I know Betazoid, that's my Deanna place. We're not doing that. That's a big no-no. And then Vulcan, no, not my Spock. So now I'm a little bit invested in it, which I know is really bad, but hey, they're doing what they should be doing as storytellers. But what was interesting is when Sisko was reflecting on that being part of his justification for his choices, is that there was this frustrated moment when they're talking about strategy, the attack on Betazoid shouldn't have worked, But one ship was just doing this one thing, and then these shields or whatever just happened to not be working. And this is what happens sometimes. You can prepare and you can have everything ready to go, and your plan still fails and you end up losing. And his choice is, all right, we got to turn the tide and we got to do it, rather than potentially fate taking over, which is what Picard would have done. Picard would have been like, no, we're not going to intervene. We're going to go have political conversations. We're going to try to find other ways to negotiate and leverage our other skill set besides this like subterfuge or whatever you want to call it. So I thought that was an interesting moment where the show recognized that even being prepared in a war sense, they still weren't entirely prepared against this foe. So it really put to, like what you were saying, Ian, you decided I asked you not to tell me the details, that they're in a really bad position at this moment in the Dominion War. That was a way for the writers to kind of remind, and even though we're trying to be ready, we're still almost like fate's against us. Like,
and it's so effective just to use that casualty list, like that straw that breaks the camel's back. Like there's nothing else that really signifies the cost of the war other than this bloody Friday report that comes out reminding you of what's happening. And it's one of my favorite things about the structure of this episode is the slide that Dave mentioned. Like, the slide of despair where all of the good intentions are just jettisoned from the ship.
Yeah.
The falling of Beta Z, just his questioning his own morals, and each thing is introduced one at a time. Like when Garrick's operatives die straight away, he's kind of happy to walk away at that point.
Yes.
But then something sucks him back in.
He just wants to know, like, what do we have options on the amount? I think the captain's log, to kind of wrap that up too, I loved the moments you guys mentioned, but the fade to the black at the end was so powerful too. Just this idea, like, I just want to touch on that. Like the way that the captain's log ended with him, like you said, Ian, accepting that he was okay with it. Like he's getting his mojo back and he's going to go out and have a good old time at the party. Delete.
Delete
it all.
Oh.
And
so
then
good.
And then the show fades to black. It's like, oh, we have to kind of now get to join this sort of idea that we're supposed to not remember this too. And that was a really clever way to end that face to camera element of the show.
And it is never mentioned again in the show.
That's so fun.
Never go back to it.
Can we talk about the Romulan guy
Yes, that was my next point. We have to talk about him. How juicy is he? How beautifully gravelly is his voice? How much did you love him, Ambassador?
I loved his controlled way that he was talking. It's like, I don't know if it's just the actor, but he does not use his upper lip very much. And it was amazing. He was just great. So controlled. And the intellectual battlefield that was happening as they were quipping back and forth, that this Romulan character knew his power and was kind of just like, I don't know, he wanted to just go walk around the Deep Space Nine before it was destroyed and just have a little jolly old time before going home. It was kind of like playing with his food in a way.
I can't imagine a Romulan wanting to be in a better position. Like, that is from everything we know from TNG. They love being in a position of power. They won't make the first move because they'll use that against you. So this is the juiciest steak that we've ever seen a Romulan bite into. He has all of the power. If Picard came to this, maybe he'd be intimidated, but Sisko isn't really a good match for Romulans. He is quite brute force-ish and quite aggressive. And I one of my favorite scenes with Dax ever is when she's playing a Romulan and he's pleading with her.
Oh, yes.
Oh, it's so juicy. The role play. It's so, she slips into that using her hundreds of years of experience and just pulls that out of like, this isn't a good idea, Benjamin. You got to be better than this. But yeah, the Romulan is excellent. The choice to do the metaphor with the drink was like, the aroma gets more appealing. I could almost be convinced. Where's your proof? It's so good. It's so beautifully crafted.
Yeah, Vreenak is, for the little bit of time that he's on the screen, is one of the most memorable Romulan characters.
He really is.
That whole dressing down of Sisko when he first comes on, listing out all of what Commander of Deep Space Nine, emissary to the prophets. thought you'd be taller.
Yes, so good.
Best use of that cliche on film ever.
Yeah, and then to go on, it's like, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Well, my opinion of Starfleet officers is so low, you'd have to go very far to disappoint me.
I love it. I love what Romulans can get away with just by being Romulan. I think he also has the award for potentially being, and this is not an easy choice to make, the most memed Star Trek character in all of canon. Like, it's a fake. That delivery is legendary, and it might seem ridiculous, but I love it every time I see it. And you just like have people like when Is It Cake came out, was like, it's a cake, was immediately done.
Yes, that's so
his
funny.
face is so good.
Oh, yes.
So I think that's a great segue into that moment. I'm always fascinated by this. I'm obviously waiting for it. Dave's waiting for it. Everybody that has watched this episode at home and has seen it already is waiting for It's a Fake. Was it okay for you? Did it feel a bit silly? Was it too intense? There's no reason for him to hold it up to his face other than it's a close-up, so we're going to need you to hold it up to your face. But how did that moment hit you?
No, I loved it. I loved it for a few reasons. When I felt the most tension in this entire episode was when he was walking around that holodeck looking at all the details.
Oh,
I was just like,
oh my gosh.
And he gave nothing away.
No.
My assumption is that he knew pretty quickly, and then he was just playing with his food, just having a good time, knowing that he was in such a position of authority and power. And this is when the episode tips to maybe like you think you know which way it's going to go. Like you think that Cisco and crew, bad guy crew, are going to, not that they're bad guys, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they're going to succeed. Like, is this going to work? To us, it looks great because it's the actors on set, playing
of course
this part, and it looks really, really great to us. I would have loved to have been part of the creation of this episode and like a super nerd and been like, okay, but this time we're going to change how many flares are on this guy's head, or like that this person's like side of the ear fin thing going on with the blue eyes, that guy. Like maybe there's like fewer fins than the one, like I would like to know what they fucked up, and if I was a super fan, I'd be like, oh no, his ear's too hot, just something that would let us know what was wrong, because the way that I interpret this is that he walked around and he gets this like little grin on his face at one point in time. And I was like, he knows it's fake. But then the build up, I was like, I didn't really, it kind of like, this was maybe my least favorite part was right after that. It just kind of took a knife to the tire a bit, because it just turned into then watching Cisco wait and talking about how he's waiting. And I'm like, okay. And then he's walking around and now he's in the room, and then the reveal is there. I needed it to be told to me, whether it was true or not true. Mm-hmm. Like I needed to know what this person was going to do. And then if the rest of it sings. Like I love that Garrick had another plan in place, and it was maybe even from the beginning, a great backup plan at the very least, explaining away how it would have been known. I think the idea is that he took it and examined it on the rod, whatever. Oh, let me look, see if did I write down what this rod is
I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to see if you got it.
Okay.
I'm sure you've got it in there.
The Optolithic data rod.
Optolithic data rod.
Lithic. I missed the C on the end. Gosh darn it. I'm assuming that it was on the deeper like evaluation that they realized it was a fake. But I wanted to believe it was in that moment because he gets this little like look, and I was like, oh, he knows. And I think like, was it that the paper on the desk was like a little bit weird? Because these are potentially people he knows. So how brave are they to be like, let's just, that's Charles from accounting,
Charles the Cardassian. My interpretation of this is you're gonna really like my interpretation, because I think it's gonna help you live your best dream.
Okay.
My interpretation is that as a classic Romulan, the replication, the hologram, everything is perfect. Everything is believable. He checks the table height, he checks the legs, he checks the clothing, he checks the decor. Everything is 100% perfect, and that's why he suspects it's a fake.
Oh.
because there isn't a single imperfection. There's this line in I think it's in Tomorrow Never Dies in GoldenEye. There you have James Bond has like this undercover thing, and they find out that he's James Bond and he's an agent because his bio was too perfect. I was like, really, guys? It was too good. That's the reason he got uncovered. So I would love to think that his first instinct was like, nah, too good, it's a fake. And then they find out the coding.
I always assumed that the issue had to be something technical about how it was recorded, because otherwise Garrick couldn't expect that a damaged optolithic data rod would pass, because they'd think that whatever was wrong with it was because of the damage to the rod.
Yeah, the bottom line is it has to be some authentication thing that exposes its replica.
Yeah, that makes sense, because his backup plan wouldn't have worked unless it was somewhat damaged. No, you're right. But I loved the scene, and the "it's a fake" thing was really, really fun. It ends so quickly, though. It's like a jarring, like, oh, like I kind of wanted it to go on like, come on!
Yes!
But like, let the fake just roll on, or and it kind of, I think it cuts back over to Sisko's face.
Yeah, in his
I
log.
didn't want it. No, I think it happened
in the scene. You might be right.
I think it kind of like shows him going like, kind of like, oh shit. But I wanted it to cut back to the actor and his like whole stare, like, I've got you. I'm taking you down.
Because guess what? He doesn't have to come back to Deep Space Nine. Once he finds that out, you don't walk back onto the ship and then risk getting whatever because you found out. But he wants that moment face to face with Sisko where he's exposed him.
And they do the right thing by making the progression of what happens next a captain's log, because a lot needs to happen. He needs to get mad. He needs to get upset. He needs to, I'm going to expose you. Watching Sisko have to be really embarrassed. All of those things are better done in the captain's log rather than watching them all in memory. But it's also kind of an interesting thing. Like, we didn't want to, like, Sisko chose not to talk about that in great detail because it was an embarrassment, and he didn't really want to spend a lot of time in his own log talking about it. Like, let's just get over the embarrassment.
Yeah, fuck that up.
And that seems very on point for, let's just move on. I don't want to think about that mistake again. So then we know, then we're kind of up to now. I think that's the moment when the episode, you think like, you're kind of like, oh, now we're caught up, because he's like, it was like it'll be 3 days later. And for a second I was like, oh, right, we're still in the log.
Well, before we move on to that, Dave, do you remember at the time how you felt at the time, or like just the build up to this moment? Did you buy, like, where were you at? Did you think that they were going to buy the fake? Did you know that it was going to be a fake? Like, do you remember how that hit you?
I actually saw it go by in the chat real quick, and I thought the same thing, that Vreenak didn't really have any evidence that it was fake, and was just calling it out as a fake. And that was my impression of it. And I think that this little segment is kind of in some ways the weakest point in the episode, because I wonder after Sisko has done all of these things, is there any way that he's just going to say, yep, you got me?
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's going to have to at that point try and bluff it out.
Yeah.
And say, well, as far as we know, it's real, and there was no reason for us to suspect it was fake.
So true. Sisko didn't have to really admit to it.
No, and we don't see him either. We don't even see that conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I just can't picture Sisko saying, yeah. Senator Vreenak.
Well, it was worth a shot. You can't blame a guy for trying.
Thanks for coming by.
Want some whiskey? Really sorry. So,
do you remember that part of the chat that Garrick had was like, you're going to have to convince him?
Yeah.
And then Sisko's like,
well, fucked it. Sorry. So Garrick did it. There is that the whole fakeness of the thing leads into, this is something that Star Trek accidentally does more than once, and it's accidentally invented technology. We were not thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, I was only 8 at the time, we were not thinking about deep fake videos in 1998. And that is what, if we did this as like an episode of Black Mirror, or we did this as something topical today. This would focus on creating an AI video of political opponents saying something dangerous or something incriminating, and that getting released.
Yeah,
this
it's a little too real now.
It's a bit too real. When I was watching it, I was like, this is scary. This is happening. This can and could throw elections.
Yeah.
But it's just Star Trek just accidentally like introduces this into the world, doesn't explore it. It's not what the episode is about, but it would be today, I think, and the morals of creating that video. It's so interesting.
Yeah, we all need to be a bit more like this Romulan guy, Vreenak, and really just walk around and examine the pictures, look for too many toes, too many fingers.
Assume it's a fake.
Just assume it's a fake. Do your due diligence.
Love that so much.
Make sure you research all your pictures and your articles and your videos.
Triple source everything. Don't believe the internet.
And then whenever you get in your vehicle at the end of the day, maybe don't just trust that there's not a bomb on it when you went to go visit Deep Space Nine, okay?
Especially if you visited a place where Garak exists.
Right.
Anything else before we get into a few sins? Any final thoughts, Commander Dave?
Yeah, I just can't say enough good things about this episode. It's easy to when you dig into it with the for at least partially for the purpose of picking it apart, you can always find holes. But this episode, from the first time I saw it, was one of the most captivating things I had ever seen on Star Trek. The thing about Deep Space Nine that appealed to me over Next Generation was that Deep Space Nine seemed a lot more grounded in what current events then, but I mean, it's amazing now that it seems still prescient. It's so prescient at this point. But I liked the fact that everything was gray on Deep Space Nine, not the sets, because they are.
They sure were.
But that there's a lot of moral ambiguity on Deep Space Nine that really wasn't very present in Next Generation. And I felt that it felt more grounded to me because of that. And this is probably the pinnacle of that for Deep Space Nine. This makes you think about, well, what would I do if I was actually in that situation, in a real life situation like that? How far am I willing to? What am I willing to become? To make this outcome that I know is going to be better for everybody. Well, most everybody.
Your side.
For the millions of dead Romulans that now exist because of it. But
who needs self-respect?
But still, it's just such a powerful episode, and it never loses that power.
I completely agree. I think that's it's such a powerful point, and I can't imagine being a fan of the show and watching this episode, and how much more amplified the feelings are about the decisions that are being made, and like. I guess I have a question about like Sisko before we go on to sins, and I asked if like things changed for you for the Garak character, but I am really curious about Sisko because we've compared him to Picard, and obviously we've talked a bit about that. Like, did your view of Sisko change after this? Does it feel different when you're watching? And maybe it's been, like you said before, David, you've watched so much now, maybe it might be difficult to kind of remember specifically, but I would imagine if I was watching this in sequence that it would shift, because now you know that every time Sisko sees Quark, every time he sees the Doctor, every time he sees Garak, there's something that's different now and I think that this episode had to have the Starfleet check-in.
Oh, could you imagine if he didn't have
it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
He would have had to have stolen, the medical goods or whatever.
He probably would have had to kill Garak.
I mean, everything changes a bit. Like you almost feel like his decisions are backed by this governing agency that we've come to kind of trust and enjoy. And this is that gray area that some of like the newer Star Trek, I feel like, goes into more, that I've heard you guys talk about. I haven't seen it, but I've heard talk, like on the Discord and on our show and just others kind of going into this area where I was like, oh, this is the more of that gray. But for Sisko, the thing that hits for me is the conversation he has with Quark. And I kind of hinted at it earlier, that there's something that changes. Like Quark is given a power over Sisko in this moment. And Quark just like relishes in it, of course. And he negotiates even having some of his cargo given to him that he shouldn't have, right? And Quark is almost like, man, you went there. I'm proud of you. You know, like there's these characters that are like, good job. Welcome to the gray side.
You don't want him to be proud of you.
But does that change Sisko's character for you in any kind of way that like changed the show?
It didn't for me, but it's interesting that, and again, without giving away too much, because this toward the end of the 6th season, everything started moving full speed ahead on Deep Space. Occasional baseball games, notwithstanding.
Aside,
but apart from those 2 weeks where they played baseball and nothing else, there were a whole lot of other things happening, and it was kind of the beginning of Sisko kind of going against the grain. And he, not specifically for this, but he makes a lot of decisions going on that actually call into question how good his judgment actually is.
Okay.
I mean, he has a good, you know, at least a decent arc at the end and how it all resolves. But he starts doing things that are controversial, you know, to the prophets, for instance, because he's been walking that line the whole series between being a Starfleet officer and being this religious figure to a, you know, whole planet full of people, which is wildly un-Starfleet.
Yeah, right.
Starfleet is very uncomfortable with that. He was at first, then he gets really comfortable with it to the point where he's like, I'm the emissary, I can do what I want. And then things start happening, start going downhill for him. So I feel like this is kind of a tipping point for Sisko as far as that kind of thing goes. I didn't have a negative opinion about him. I thought deeply about this episode, and I thought probably I would probably do the same thing. I think I'd have trouble living with it afterwards, more so than Sisko does. But you know, it didn't negatively affect my opinion of him. It made the character deeper, if anything.
Yeah. I firmly land in the bucket that while I think I want lots of Picards, I'm glad we don't. I'm glad we have a variety of captains, and this moment is a pivotal moment for me for Sisko. It shows not just that we always kind of know he's capable of it, because early on they deliberately set him apart from Picard. Like the live chat has mentioned it a couple of times. Q only visits Deep Space Nine once because Sisko punches him off the station and Q never returns. And he literally says the words, "I'm not Picard," because Q is so offended that he's been punched. So you always know there's an edge to Sisko and there's a harshness to him. But he crosses a lot of lines one at a time, gradually. And whether it's right or wrong, I'm glad I never have to be in the position where I would have to make this, because I don't think I'm a strong enough character to make either decision. I think I would run. I don't think anything would have happened. I would have left Deep Space Nine and be on Risa somewhere. I would have quit my job. So the fact that he did it and can live with it, it's that last smile at the end where he's like, guess what? I can live with it, and I will. That's where I'm like, you're a different breed. You're a different type of Starfleet captain. This really, like, you can point to this as the moment that defines Sisko and what he's capable of doing. So I don't think it changed. It confirmed what I had suspected Sisko was capable of.
I love that because it shows an intentional character arc with the writing. And I just really respect when a show has a plan and you can kind of see it kind of come out. Like, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed Lost, but it just felt like to compare in my brain of an opposite, it's kind of like, oh, let's try this season. Oh, let's try this season. But whereas I always feel like Star Trek is really intentional with some things. And Ian, you've talked so many times about like when Gene was alive, having some really strong boundaries with certain areas that after his passing were sort of explored more and more. And Deep Space Nine is not in one adventure every episode, experimentation, storytelling. And then within that to have a character arc of one of your main characters, not necessarily a slippery descent, but an intentional change of character potentially. So that's really cool for me. So thank you for telling me that. I think it's such an interesting thing to talk to two people who have had such long experiences with the show.
It's a great question, because Star Trek is famous for one episode memory, and one episode memory prevents deep character work like we see in Deep Space Nine. And Deep Space Nine for me is the perfect bridge between single episode bottle adventures and believable ongoing character arcs that pay off. And I don't think we haven't seen Star Trek like Deep Space Nine since Deep Space Nine. For me, it's incredible. Before we get into sins, final pippage. Dave, do I even need to ask?
You do not. Four pips.
It's 4 pips. Ambassador to that. I don't know. I didn't actually ask for your final thoughts on the episode, Ambassador. So give us pips and your final thoughts about the episode.
I think this would be a really great episode of Star Trek to introduce to somebody who's who really likes historical material, war movies, just things that kind of show about the decisions that have to be made in difficult times. It doesn't need any context. I don't think that you ever have to have seen an episode of Deep Space Nine to follow this one. So I'm really glad that I went into this one blind, because they do everything that you need to do to help understand the characters, their role, and these kinds of things. It's a really, really good episode of TV. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I'm constantly impressed by the writing of this show. Not just this show, but like this series. Star Trek is just it's a really, really fun place to watch television. When they're longer episodes and they're deeper episodes, I get a little nervous because there's more room for me to be like, oh, I'm finding some cracks here. But they kind of even do some unexpected things. It has a very dramatic ending. It feels really, really real. Yeah. This, like you said, Dave, this feels like a very true moment for a character to really struggle with something. It felt very personal because it's his own log and the way that it ends with wanting it to kind of just be deleted. And it's watching a character have something change them forever, maybe not in a bad way, but in an uncomfortable way of their own doing. It highlights the character, it highlights the decisions and how they impact your crew, and that he has the authority to tell people to do what he wants to do and to make choices that makes me uncomfortable, which is a really, really powerful thing to do in 40 some minutes of television. So definitely a 4 pip.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I love that we did go into it blind, because this is selfishly a test of In the Pale Moonlight. Not that it needs testing, not that it needs to defend itself, but if you can go into it quasi-blind and it still stands up, then it seals it even more as just a story that works regardless of context. It really does give you everything you need, even if you haven't met any single character. You know they're at war, you know it's going badly. It even tells you how important Beta Z is. You don't have to know any of that.
Yeah.
It's so completely beautifully crafted. And to do that in season 6, when you don't necessarily need to, because I don't know that many people are watching this episode that haven't been with you along the ride. Like, the odds of somebody suddenly tuning in at episode 19 of the 6th season, you don't have to pander to that person. But the fact that it does, and not even pander, the fact that it pulls that off is just, again, one of the reasons why it's an all-timer. It's 4 pips from me as well. I refuse to sin it. I'm going to leave. However, I don't actually refuse to sin it.
Of course not.
Of course not. Let's head over to engineering for a few sins. 3 to beam out.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we re-engage our sin brains, remind ourselves that no TV shows without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Dave, I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be quite a cathartic experience for you, and I think you probably have the most, so you can go first, sir.
Well, yeah, the absolute biggest sin is a huge "this works."
Yes, right. That's it. That's exactly it.
So in order for Garrick's backup plan to work, an optolithic data rod the size of a pack of lifesavers not only has to survive the explosion of the starship, and even Garrick says miraculously survives, but it also has to be found amongst the wreckage of that starship in the vastness of space in order for this plan to work at all.
And not vaporized by the Dominion.
And it still has to be working.
Yes. Yeah, it's incredible. There is an amount of chance that comes into it. Yeah, there is a lot that has to go off without a hitch.
Like, was the box that it was inside of like have a homing beacon, and then it was complete? Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was blown into space, most likely. There's no way to know. It was all very much a this whole thing works for me. Like, I kept asking myself, like, but for sure that was going to work. And
it's the kind of thing that sounds really impressive when you explain it convincingly and confidently, but then when you break it apart, it's like, nah, you couldn't have actually known that, Sherlock.
My sin was consistently like, there's just too many people that know what's going on already somehow, right? Like once Bluey shows up and is out in the bar causing a scene, it just seems like too many people know already. But maybe that's just silly too. Like there's just a lot.
I agree. It was one of my biggest sins. I know Taylor dies, but he is still
on the ship.
He's on the ship.
The station.
He's allowed to leave without a personal escort. Like Worf should be escorting him everywhere. He wanders off to the bar. And also Starfleet knows about the plan. There are people at Starfleet that could leak it and be a whistleblower or something. Like this is not I think to be truly foolproof, there are things that Sisko couldn't do, which would be tie up Taylor and vaporize him as soon as it's happened. Don't run it through Starfleet at all. It's only he and Garak that knows, and probably kill Garak as well. Yeah. And that's just that is way too far for Starfleet.
My sin for Blue is just like, this guy cannot be unforgotten. Like he
exists. People are going to wonder probably why he died.
Like, where did he go?
Yeah, you gotta wonder if maybe when Sisko called in this plan to Starfleet, they just at the switchboard they were like, bah, don't tell me too much. I'm transferring. Section 31 will take your call.
Yeah, exactly. Just no, that's a great sin. Why didn't Section 31 think of this? This is why you have a Section 31. It's amazing. I've got a really silly sin, but he should have immediately be able to figure out it was a fake because it was all in English. They were all talking English, so we should have known.
No, it was a translator. You always have to remember those universal translators. But they're everywhere.
But the lips on the holograms were speaking English words.
Quit it. That's funny.
Dave, back to you. I'm standing by that one.
Well, the other really big sin for me was why didn't Vreenak immediately contact Romulus and tell them what Sisko did?
Immediately.
It's 2 days before his ship. 2 days before his ship was destroyed. So for 2 days, he's flying on his little ship.
Just keep it a secret.
Not saying anything to anybody.
It's
like, wait till I get back to Romulus. I got to look them in the eye when we do that.
Yeah, they're going to love this. It's so ridiculous that in my head, I manufactured a false memory where his ship explodes as it leaves Deep Space Nine. I remembered that happening until today. And I think I remember this every time I watch it. And I was like, wait, why doesn't he blow up yet? It's 2 days later? What? That's ridiculous. Like, my brain refuses to lock that in as the end of the episode.
This is a super nitpicky one, but that's what we do.
Yeah.
There is a couple of times, I wrote this, so here's my sin is, but you said that it was your first mistake earlier because in his like face to camera confessions, after he talks to Quark, it goes face to camera and he said, this isn't the first real moment of doubt. This whole thing was a mistake. But the face to camera one previous to that was with Bluey when he says, Garak is here. I'll go wait in my quarters. And then he goes face to camera and he had just said, not to believe the voice in the back of my head, that this was a mistake.
Yes.
So it's like he had many times of realizing he was making a mistake before it was further down the line. And even how they wrote it, it was like, okay, but maybe his real mistake was not knowing how to say it was the first time he made a mistake.
Yeah, and there's even a mistake.
That could be the point, but it was kind of annoying. I'm like, but you just said that was your first mistake. But you just said mistake.
You labeled it, and there's a mistake previous to that when the 3 operatives die, and then Garak gives the option of releasing Taylor as somebody that he needs to get hold of, and that's a point where he's like, I could have backed out then, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm going to say on the silly sins, this is when Garak and Sisko were in the turbo lift. And just if you pause a turbo lift, does that just pause everybody? Is there nobody that can now get to ops? Because they're in that turbo lift for so long. Are they just creating a blockage?
Yeah.
Like there's only so many times you can go around a blockage in the system. So I would put that in there. But I do love also in that moment how quickly Sisko is like, ops, pause. And then immediate backpedal. I was like, okay, I can't do 200, but 85. Like, it's such an immediate, like, Garak doesn't have to say a thing, and I can just see all of the processing that happens in Sisko's brain.
Before we go on to the next one, I do want to say too, in the chat earlier, I forgot to figure out who said it. Sorry about this, but it was implied that they thought that the what Garak did with the bio thing. I was saying, what happened to the bio stuff?
Oh yes,
they had implied that Garak actually used that to blow up the shuttle because it was mentioned on the list of things that this goop can do. Besides bioengineering, that it could also be used as a win. So, here it is from Random Mochi. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I always assume.
I think I agree with that though.
I love that idea because it kind of explains. It's another beautiful layer of Garak securing something for himself.
Exactly.
But I always assumed that it was a program or something because Garak's like, they'll never know that I was anywhere near the ship because he wasn't. He did it all remotely and just managed to put a code in there that blew it up or something.
Okay, sorry.
No, go for it. Dave, your turn.
While we're on the biomimetic gel, Sisko says that, that's ridiculous. There's not 200 liters of that in the entire quadrant. And then he's like, and then they're like 85, which they had in Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
They had almost half of it right there on the station.
What does it do? It didn't even have to like replicate it, find it. But she was just like, I've got it, but I'm not going to give it to you. Like, that you stole my next sin. It is ridiculous how much they have to hand. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have any more. I can steal some from the chat.
Do it. Steal them from the chat. I'm going to give you my last silly one because Dave stole my only really serious sins. And this is when Sisko says, experience has told me that bad news comes in the night. Title of my sex tape. Back to you, Dave. Give us something serious.
Well, I was going to go on that one because another silly one in that same scene is, does Sisko sleep with all the lights on?
Yes.
Good point.
Because the room was just absolutely fully lit when he woke up.
Yep, absolutely. Maybe he's like, whenever he gets a communication, it immediately turns the lights on. Like, no wonder he's always angry.
This is a silly one from Sci-Fi Brony. Sin, reminder to Deneé that all of the Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite is probably supposed to take place in a room that is only that size.
No, it's bigger than that because of conveyor belts and stuff. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
It's funny.
My next one. What did I did have one. Where is it gone? Yep. Dave, give us your next one while I try and pull that out of my brain.
Okay, so when Dax is looking at the casualty list at the beginning of the episode, she's standing there looking concerned, runs her finger down the list, stops when she finds a name, and then just walks away. She was only in the second column.
Oh.
There might have been 10 people she knew on that list, but she was like, whoop, one's enough.
Good point, as if they're rationing them out.
She was looking for one specific person. Is that person dead yet?
Fuck everyone else. Yes, they died. They're the only one that beat me at the academy. That's a really, really good point. What's weird is Worf doesn't even look. Worf's not interested at all. Like, you think he'd be celebrating the deaths of all of his honored fallen.
Whatever, it was a good day to die.
Yeah, exactly. There was another one that I had, which was, I don't really understand why, and you can probably help me out with this. Why does Renak agree to go to Deep Space Nine? Because this is not a good tactical move on the part of the Romulans because they're on their way to a diplomatic meeting with the Dominion. I guess maybe he could use it as I've had talks with the Federation as well, so maybe you should sweeten the deal. But it seems, what does he think he's going to gain from that trip? Because the Federation are on the back foot. Like, it's almost in his interest to not be tempted into doing something silly or something that puts Romulan lives at risk. So I think one of the most convenient things is getting Renak to agree to this trip to Deep Space Nine, and we don't even see that conversation happen. He just agrees to it.
Yeah, I actually had that one too because there's no logical reason that Renak would accept an invitation from Sisko to go with only 4 people behind enemy lines.
One of the most dangerous places right now as well, Deep Space Nine. So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Another thing that I don't think that, and this is another kind of nitpicky one, is does Sisko really have the kind of pull that he needs to just call Gowron and say, hey, this guy that you're going to execute?
Yeah.
Could you let him go and send him here?
again,
That
it's
so quickly happens too. It's like just a casual mention, like, but to do it, you're going to have to call this guy and get this guy to come in. And the next scene's like, well, there's the guy.
Guess
There
that
he
worked.
is.
Yeah, it's very telling when those conversations happen off screen. So it's like,
Yes.
you didn't have a convincing way to do that, but I guess there's timing as well.
I want to
but
see that scene.
any scene with Gowron, because Gowron is the Klingon with the crazy eyes.
Yes.
Like,
Wait, which they all have
no, this guy specifically
looking
has.
up.
Look up Gowron crazy
Gowron
eyes.
crazy eyes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. I see now.
Any scene with Gowron is a needed scene.
When you say crazy eyes, I feel like what you specifically need to describe to anyone who has not seen Gowron, it is that it is a white pool cue ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you can see all of the white around the pupil.
90% white, 10% actual pigment.
That's amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. Ambassador, any others?
No, I do want to give a send-off. I really loved Bluey's prosthetics.
Yes.
I loved it so much. You know, I'm a huge fan of really fun like creature work, and Face Off was one of my favorite reality TV shows for quite some time when it was on. I love prosthetic work, and it was so beautiful. I want to know more about that creature. I don't know if we know what that creature, like what their alien species is or where they're from or anything,
Nope.
but that one needs to make a comeback because it was beautiful. And the person that was acting inside of that prosthetic was doing a fantastic job because they kind of had this little kind of thing going on.
Yes.
And it really was the humor that we needed in this episode that's lacking so much humor. Quark and Bluey are the only real relief I can think of that we have. I mean, the show forces a little Dax and Cisco moment, like, oh, that role play was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
but
enjoyed
that didn't work for me because I'm not as like jiving
you
with
hate
the two of
Jadzia.
them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they're two of my least favorite Deep Space Nine characters, but these guys were like super fun, and like Quark's prosthetics close up and the humor with like, don't you know how expensive this shirt is, and just sort of lightening up that moment. There was even a line about like Quark showing his what did they say? Chivalry?
Yeah, I guess
Was it?
so.
Was it?
Oh,
an uncharacteristic display of chivalry.
yes, saving the Dubbo girl.
Yeah. So the pair of them were really fun, and of course the Ferengi prosthetics. It's just so interesting to see that when the camera zooms in, that it's holding up. Like the teeth are looking good, and the headpiece is looking good. So it's just a delight, and that's one of the things I love.
I've always felt the same way about the Cardassian prosthetics.
Oh
I thought they're very fully realized aliens, and it's not just the facial stuff because they've got the shoulder piece too, and on it also extends to the hands when you see close-ups of the hands.
Yeah, it's so cool.
The scales are great.
It's really well done.
It's fun because the prosthetics world obviously just gets better and better with materials that are used. Like when we went to the museum and we saw some of the older materials, you know, very styrofoam and foam based, which are obviously thicker and more difficult. Now we've got like the silicone, and it's just fantastic. But yeah, there's a reason I love sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it is because we get to see really interesting things brought to life. And so I loved that Deep Space Nine gave me one that I hadn't seen yet. I hadn't seen Little Bluey before.
I'm always amazed when they decide to do that amount of prosthetic work in a character we never see again, in an alien race I don't think we see again, in a part that's on screen for less than 5 minutes. Like, that is hours and hours and hours of work, where in other episodes, they pass with like a nose ridge or some painting.
Right.
Like, who made that call that this episode deserved 12 hours of incredible prosthetic work? And it always seems to be the criminals. I think it's something about making the criminal aliens really memorable.
Yeah.
And like this extra level of like skeeziness to him. So it's
well, even Odo is really unique as well. I've seen Odo before, so you know I don't want to forget about that character either. But like just having your entire face just be like this kind of more smooth thing and still being able to emote with your voice, it's just so powerful. Sean in chat points out that the trick for the Cardassian prosthetics is that there's 5 pieces and most of the actor's face is unlike most of the other aliens. So that was cool.
That's really, really cool. Have we ever talked about why Odo looks the way he looks? It's one of my favorite bits of Star Trek logic.
Because he's part putty.
Well, it's because he's putty, but because when he was learning to shapeshift, he tried to emulate the first person that he met, but he wasn't very good at his powers. So he's trying to emulate a human, and that's his best approximation. So it is the bug becomes the feature, and then the founders just emulate Odo. So it's not necessarily what the founders look like. It's just that Odo isn't a very good shapeshifter.
So hold on a second.
Uh-huh.
Can Odo try harder now and just chooses
He
not
could.
to?
He just chooses not to, yeah.
So it's like
It's what the face people are
it's
used
just,
to.
he's just comfortable in that particular
100%.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always figured it became his identity because he
Yes.
does when he meets the founders, he does start shape-shifting into like birds and
He can be a highly
other
detailed
animals.
eagle.
He does it really well.
Yes.
But I felt like that he accepted that as his personality,
Oh,
and that's who he
that's so
was.
interesting. Imagine it like, I guess it's sort of, it just becomes comfortable.
Yeah. And it
Oh,
would be
I
a bit
love that.
jarring to the people around him if he suddenly changed what he looks like that fundamentally. So yeah. he
Oh,
just
that's
kept
such
it
a
going.
cool little thing. I love that.
I
I
love
love
it.
that idea of just like, nope, I sneeze and form this way, and this is where I'm comfortable
Yeah,
now.
This was my best attempt. I guess I'm going to... And that's why all the features are smooth, because detail is hard. So
Detail is
yeah,
difficult
I love
when
that.
you're a little shapeshifter and you don't know how to pay attention to details.
Love it so much. Well, I think that about wraps us up. What an incredibly fun episode. Pretty much, I think, the perfect way to wrap up the season. Dave, thank you for
Thanks,
joining
Dave.
us so much. Always love hearing your Star Trek insight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love talking about this episode. I could talk about this episode for days.
But just this one, no other Star Trek at all.
No, yeah. I hardly ever talk about
Never,
Star
not
Trek.
at all. Where can people find you? Do you have anything to plug at the minute? What are you doing with yourself?
Well, I haven't made any other Star Trek films since 359, but I have written a couple. Yeah, I've actually let you read them.
Yeah.
But you can still watch 359, and you can check out my home arcade if you're interested in pinball machines and all the stuff that I've got there. At my website, ellis1701.com. Should be easy
What
enough
is the
to remember
significance
that.
of that number? I don't understand. It's also all of his passwords.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It was the founding of Yale College.
Oh, was it actually 1701? Did you just make that up?
I just Googled it really
That's
fast.
amazing. That's brilliant. Well, absolute pleasure to join us. Next up on Captain's Pod, we are going to be taking, and I can hear the collective sadness. I'm so sorry. We will be taking a hiatus for a little while because a certain captain is moving homes. He is going to be reshuffling his entire life. That is not conducive to having internet and squeezing in recordings. So Captain's Pod will be taking a break. Now, we had teased that the next season would either be Origin of the Species or the worst/weirdest Star Trek ever. And it's no surprise to anybody that the worst/weirdest Star Trek won. We had multiple... I've already got 50 episodes that have been sent to me. That season is locked in. If we return before Strange New Worlds, we will be doing the worst/weirdest episodes of Star Trek. Our lovely Discord has named it What the F? So What the Fun Star Trek? Because
Instead
it can
of
also
worst.
double as What the Fuck Star Trek. So you can interpret that as whatever you like. So yeah, if we're back before...
Not the worst, the weird.
The weirdest. If we're back before Strange New Worlds airs, we will do a season of the weirdest Star Trek. If not, you'll definitely see us for Strange New Worlds. Anything else, Ambassador, before we wrap it up?
Nope. I would just say enjoy the hiatus. Think of a goal that you have in mind and try to accomplish it before we get back.
Yeah.
If you want to have support in your Star Trek-ing while we are gone, join the Discord because others just like you are there who like to share silly memes and troll us.
I love
And
pitching
you're
that as a
welcome
Star
there.
Trek support group.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we don't exactly know how long the hiatus will be, but we will post updates on Discord as we have them. That's kind of our place for those updates.
Yeah.
So, but you're always welcome to email us no matter what, whether you've got questions, suggestions. And I secretly hope we can put something up in the feed.
Yeah,
Just
I
for
think we can.
funsies,
Yeah.
even if it's just something like that's small and an update. But if you want to know about like the most up-to-date info, you can find it on discord.gg/CinemaSins. And then we have a Captain's Pod little group inside of the CinemaSins Discord.
Yeah, we do. Well, until next week, thank you for listening, everyone. Thank you for downloading. Send us whatever you want to send us, captainspod@cinemasins.com. Join the lovely CinemaSins Discord, discord.gg/cinemasins, and join the Captain's Pod channel. And until next time, I'm Captain Ian, and I lied. I cheated. I bribed men to cover the crimes of other men. I am an accessory to murder. But the most damning thing of all is I think from me.
Dave, do you have one? You want to go next?
I probably took all of it.
It's computer erased that entire personal
Oh,
log.
yes!
And there are some things I would rather not discuss.
Live long and Podsper.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod@cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
We are recording.
Are we? Are we? Are we?
Are we?
Are we, though?
Are we, though?
Are we? Little headphones are hanging on by a thread.
Oh, those might be mine.
Oh, they are, yeah. Oh, these aren't mine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that'll do.
They don't work.
They don't work?
No.
Then let's put them in the bin! I have like a little list of things to talk about in outtakes. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Escape room, which we know we can't do.
Oh, we should talk
Which we
about that
could.
because we
We
kind of
could do
started.
that.
Well, we started the chat live, and we should
Yeah.
definitely talk more like in detail.
Yeah, okay. The next one is Star Trek characters as dogs. You remember we did this like 2 months ago, and you said, I think you wanted to do what Deanna Troi was going to be. I can't remember what character we started with, but was it like Riker? Like, what dog would Riker be?
I love that.
And I said Labrador, and we were going to do this each week, and then we
my
never
God.
did.
We have so many ideas that we think are really, really good, and
We
then
do.
they're not good because they just drop off.
They just get immediately abandoned, but I still made a note about it.
So you made a note. This isn't, a fan that's coming to us saying like, "Hey, please, I really wanted to know your answer to this question." This is just.
Unless that fan is you.
I actually really do. I do want to do the dog thing. That sounds fun.
I can't even remember what character we started with, but you said we need to do this with a character each week, and you had one in mind for Deanna.
Did I?
Yeah, and all I can think is doodle something because of her hair.
Oh.
So it's a something doodle.
A something
What's a
doodle.
really empathic dog that gets neglected?
Why is she neglected?
Because she always gets her scenes cut from every episode.
Well, has there ever been another empath?
Spock, technically.
No.
The Vulcans.
I'm talking about a Deanna Troi like alien. Have we ever seen
Oh,
another
Beta
one?
Z? Yeah.
Besides Troy's mom.
In Discovery, yes, I think. There's also another one in TNG that appears in an episode, but he's hiding the fact. Spoilers. He's hiding the fact that he's Beta Z and gets exposed by Deanna.
Yeah, you can't out Beta.
Yeah, she could.
Especially because she's super powerful, right?
Her mum is super powerful.
Well, that means that she also is.
Well, but she's half human, so she's polluted herself.
So Iris was talking about wanting to be somebody who could read minds, and when when you were playing Star Trek, did you tell her about Deanna Troi?
You have at some point.
Okay, because
Yeah.
she was like, "I want to be Troy," and I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
I want to be
wanna
Troy.
be her. She said, "So is Deanna Troi a Vulcan then, or is she human?"
I can't believe she remembers that. That's
Her
so cool.
memory is incredible.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I said she's a Beta Z and she can read minds. Okay, I want to be her, but I'm human. I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's handy because they look human.
Yeah.
My next thing on my list is Elkar's laptops, which was added yesterday because Iris and I made paper laptops using the Elkar's design and drawing. She drew an Enterprise and a bad guy ship with the Klingons. We put those on, and then we played Bridge Commander in our imaginations, and then she fixed the warp core with a sonic screwdriver that I gave her.
It was so cute. She did say, "Do you want to play with us?" And I said, "Yeah, can I be captain?" She goes, "Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. Ian is already captain." I like that she tried to find the battleships game because that's what you did the first time. And when that failed, you both got the paper and pens out and made your own computers.
Yeah, because the battleships she literally used to say that there was an enemy ship incoming, and that was her little laptop computer bridge of the Enter. And I'm not, nobody will believe this, but I'm not forcing it on her. She came to me. We were gonna play hula hoop in the front yard, but the ground was too dirty, and she didn't want to get her hula hoop dirty. So we went back inside, and she was like, "Do you want to play Star Trek instead?" And I was like, "Okay, this is great, amazing."
We got the Tribble out that you got her for Christmas.
Oh, we did.
That was added to the list. And then I found these little foam like cheap little guns that just fire little foam discs and made them the phasers.
Yeah.
I heard you guys use those at one point.
With the Tribble, I wanted to turn it on because I haven't seen this Tribble since I bought it for her because I sent it over as a Christmas present. And I went to turn it on and she stopped me and said, "It's not worth it." Just deadly serious, because once you turn it on, the noise doesn't stop.
Lot. No, there's no pause. It just vibrates violently, and then it does two different sounds: the coos, and then just this sort of like wild attack sound. Yeah, so we decided not to talk about this on the live show because we realized that some of the chatter is a spoiler. If you're a escape room fan, especially if you're an escape room fan of the specific one that is in the Opryland Mills Mall in Nashville. So we have cleverly put this at the very end of today's like little outtake segment.
Spoilers!
So that you can just check out right now if you don't want to know about the spoilers of this thing. But we really did want to talk about it because it was very Star Trek-y.
It was a dream come true. I got to live out my little Star Trek dream and just fully imagine that I was on a ship doing this.
It was adorable to watch it. The mission that we were on was to take a shuttle to a space station and sabotage the space station so that it would explode because some of the components on the space station would destabilize a black hole, therefore saving the entire world.
Exactly, and that's the key to it. So we won't get into specifics with how you solve the puzzle, but it was just fun walking into this room that has like a little makeshift warp core in the middle.
Makeshift makes it sound like it was sort of like thrown together. It looked really good.
It looked great, but I mean, it wasn't like a warp core. Like it's this central cylindrical. I know they don't exist, but I mean, it wasn't trying to be a Star Trek warp core.
I think like when you say that, I'm like, that was a fucking warp core. It was just small. You're thinking like it needs to be the size of a room.
Yeah, it needs to like and go like vom vom vom. It needs like dilithium chambers and whatnot.
Oh my god! But the very end was, I think, maybe what we should talk about the most.
Yeah, that was the most fun, and it is the most spoilery bit. But basically, once you've shut down everything, you get told to go back to the shuttle that you arrived in and escape on that shuttle. When you all get into the final shuttle, you realize, as with a lot of these movies, the controls for like the manual override on the door aren't working. So it has to be manually sealed from the other side of the door. So somebody has to go down with the space station while the other three get to escape.
This was really interesting, because we have really clever minds in this escape room scenario.
This was so funny.
We have three people that you probably know. Obviously, two are Ian and I. And then there's Aaron Dicer, who you probably are familiar with if you've listened to like the Strange New Worlds episodes, or obviously he's a common voice that you would hear on CinemaSins. He's the narrator of T-Sins. Anyway. Very brilliant strategist as well. And then his lovely wife, Jen, also an amazing strategist. So we're all like, there has to be a way. The time is ticking. We have like maybe a minute or a minute and a half.
There's a minute
like
countdown. That. Yeah, where you've got to decide.
Aaron and I are from Radioland. A minute is a long time.
It's so long.
You can go to the bathroom and come back and be ready to go live in a minute. Like there's a lot that can happen in 60 seconds. So we're not convinced that there's not a way to rig this door, because essentially somebody had to stand and like hold the door panel thing up, like the little slider element.
And there were parts that we hadn't used. So we were trying to jerry-rig something to push the handle up so that we could all escape.
There was a couple of long pieces of like, not thread, but similar, just for your imagination. And we're like, okay, we used this earlier. We had rags earlier. Like we can grab those, link them together, and then make it to where like we have our hand and we just like, and we're really trying. And the people that are watching us are like, there is no way to make this stay up.
One of you has to stay behind. And we're like, okay, thanks. Okay.
It was so interesting too, because I feel like if it was a true escape room experience, they would not have given us the hints that because we didn't ask for them.
And then we would have all died. Like we should have all died.
We should have all died.
by the countdown.
I should have died with you, because once they said that, you were like, I'll do it. And I was like, I'll go with you, Ian. And we jump in together to the one side. And the next thing I know, I am midair.
So Deneé jumps in with me, and I've got my hand on the lever, and suddenly I'm at the end of the Wrath of Khan, and I literally push her with 10 seconds to spare. I push her into the room, pull the door closed, and then throw the lever down.
And the last thing he says is, tell Iris I love her.
So the three of them escape, and I die on the space station.
Yeah, it was epic.
It was amazing. It was so great.
They come and tell us that's designed, you know, that way, which is why we were all given these little postcard kind of things to say, I escaped. And one person's is a different color, and it says, I almost
escaped. I got so close. But it was fun to do the Spock moment, and
you were loving it.
And I loved it so much. I got to sacrifice myself on the spaceship and get sucked into a black hole.
When the doors closed, I don't know if you could hear, but Aaron said, it's okay, Deneé. This is how he would have wanted to go.
I did hear that. Yeah.
I was like, I guess you're right. Like,
that's what he would have wanted.
This is such a Star Trek way to go.
Man, I should have done like the little mind meld on you to transfer my capture, but I forgot in the moment.
You forgot. Yeah, it was a lot going on.
It was a lot.
We are going to be discussing today Deep Space. We're still in our favorites season, and we're going to be doing, what was it? You said it was the most requested episode.
This is the
today?
most requested episode, and I'm going to cut you off there, Deneé, because it's the most requested episode, and it's so important, it's so special that I've drafted in some extra help to get through this episode, and we have a special guest that will be beaming in at any second.
You didn't tell me.
Probably right now.
It's you. Holy cow.
We've got a Dave Ellis.
Here I am.
Here he is.
Permission to come aboard.
Permission granted, sir. The look on her face is perfect.
It's so good to see you. Oh, look at that. I can still be surprised.
So a few, probably longer than that, like 6 months ago or something like that, I was emailed, and we kind of came up between each other that if we ever did In the Pale Moonlight, Dave would come and join us and talk about it, because it is, I think it's your all-time favorite episode. Is that right?
Well, there's like 940 episodes of Star Trek now.
That's fair.
And it's really hard to nail down just one favorite. But if somebody presses me, In the Pale Moonlight is it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So imagine that conversation. You're just like, no, tell me. No, tell me now. No, which one is it? No, you have to compare. You have to compare them. You have to decide.
It's very telling that I haven't shared my top 5.
Yeah.
I still haven't done it.
I could never do this on my own. Like it would fall apart. It would fall apart so fast.
I'd watch it so quick.
Yeah. I would. Okay. If it was going to be a Deneé episode, I would start off by not having a plan at the very beginning. And I would
You wouldn't know what episode you're watching.
I don't know what I'm doing. I would go to some sort of like website to pick a random thing between one and whatever. And that's the episode that I would watch. And then I would watch it, and I'd come onto the show, and I would be like, guys, some stuff happened and I have no idea what it means, but I like this part, and that's all I know. And nobody would have names correct. We wouldn't know any history. It would be so boring.
I don't know how you're saying anything people wouldn't want to listen to.
No, there's no way. I would, you know what, Sean, I would do anything Frakes, because I really did like the ones that Frakes did.
Frakes.
It's a Frakes.
It's a Frakes. Oh, that's great.
Amadio Ho says, to be fair, the Borg did not pose an imminent threat to the Federation when Picard had his choice with Hugh. Picard had Q as a backup.
I would
So kind of a different situation.
I see that, but I think while the Borg exist, they're always a threat. I think it's just because they never declare war. They just are.
Wandering says, ironically, I feel that there isn't enough everything changes to the rest of the series after this episode. Basically, the only change is that the Romulans are in. There doesn't really seem to be enough character change for me. I was glad to read that, because it is an interesting
I can see that.
part of, it seems to me from an outside perspective, a lot of things would change after this because the captain does something so off the books.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of internalized. Like, we know it happened, but Yeah.
Especially with a doctor. Can you imagine being a doctor, protecting this very specific material, and your commander just comes and says, just give me all of what we have and don't ask questions. And he's like, I'm going to report this. And he's like, so? And then I'm going to object this. Great, do it. Like, I would lose some element of trust with my hierarchy if that happened.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I agree with that.
So
No, I think that probably, and this gives away a little bit, but probably a little bit of what, is a buffer with Bashir and Sisko is that Bashir gets involved with Section 31 eventually, and Sisko gives him a big pass on that. So maybe they wrote it off as offsetting penalties.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that.
my only animal story for this week is that Thunderstorm went to the vet and he has gained some pounds since becoming my cat.
Surprise!
And I have been hand slapped by Ian and gently reminded by his original neighbor mom that maybe I shouldn't be feeding him as much as I do. And I am struggling with that. And so is the cat, because the last 24 hours have been him really emphatically meowing at me to get my ass in gear and put something on his plate because it is empty and I'm struggling. But
his meows are turning more into meow, mom, mom.
Here's a question from Ian. Have you seen the new season of Doctor Who?
I have, actually. I've watched the first 2 episodes. I've just been sent access to episode 3 because I've got some screeners, but I can't say anything about it. I really enjoyed episode 2. I somewhat enjoyed episode 1. But I've actually joined up with the Lorehounds. So if you search for Sonic Screwcast in your podcast player of choice, you'll hear myself, Alicia, and John talk about Doctor Who thoughts. We're not going to be covering every single episode because of the reason that we're pausing Captain's Pod. But we're going to be doing a few of them. So if you want to hear my thoughts about Doctor Who, go over to the Sonic Screwcast.
By the way, how did you recover from those pickles last week?
Violently. Man, if there was a way to delete the entire episode as soon as somebody listened to it, that would be the most meta thing ever.
Oh my God.
Oh, I love it. Okay, let's make sure I've got the things.
You've got the things, you've got the things,
I've got the keys.